I've just read a very disturbing story from Guatemala, as reported by the Daily Mail. I'll put a link to their article so that you can see, and I'm sure there'll be other information online. Unfortunately, this is not an isolated incident in the world in recent years, and it's something that always sickens me to the core, but I do want to say something about it. And I've probably done so in the other cases as well. That's how strongly I feel about this. So basically, this is the report. This is a context, and I would ask you to listen to everything before you comment, please. So, okay, this is the headline: Shocking moment: Girl, 16, is surrounded and beaten by mob who burned her to death after she was involved in murdering a 60-year-old taxi driver in Guatemala. Horrifying video shows girl in flames as vicious mob cheer and taunt her. A teenager was allegedly part of a gang that killed a motorcycle taxi driver. Police now investigating despicable incident in the village of Rio Bravo. And basically, the report says that the two male members of the gang escaped. She took a wrong turning and ended up in the hands of this mob. Um, the victim on the motorcycle was 68-year-old Carlos Enrique Gonzalez Noriega, and they robbed him and ran away. Um, basically, there's a few photos in this link, and they're very disturbing. Horrible images. I'm not surprised they're not showing the video because the photos are bad enough. So, um, apparently the police say that they tried to reach her, but the mob was 250 strong and held the police back. So I want to talk a little bit about this. Um, First and foremost, there will be some people who watch this video and say, "Oh, why are you sympathizing with a criminal? Because she was part of a gang that killed a man." Well, I think it's perfectly compatible to condemn a crime and recognize a serious crime, but also condemn a consequence of that crime in a way that shouldn't be, i.e., not through due process. Um, if this girl was guilty, and it appears that she was, of the crime, then what should have happened is she should have been arrested, tried, and sentenced to a lengthy period behind bars, along with the two male members of the gang. So, a man has died. I'm not overlooking that fact. A murder is a terrible crime. So this girl wasn't innocent, okay? She committed a terrible crime, and had she lived, she would have spent a very long time behind bars, and rightly so. But I defy anyone to look at those pictures and tell me in their heart that they don't feel some disgust at what the mob done to her. And as far as I'm concerned, they're no better than her, and I would argue worse. Although murder is murder, but like I said, this isn't an isolated incident. There was an alleged rapist was dragged from his prison cell in India a few months ago, lynched by a mob. And I've heard of cases in Pakistan, in Brazil, around the world of this sort of stuff happening. Usually over someone being caught committing a crime or alleged to have committed a crime, but they all have one thing in common, and that is that there is no due process. Now, to me, due process is a hallmark of a civilized society. I stopped short there of saying civilized country because, if you try to evaluate this, like how can human beings behave in this sort of animalistic way, some people might say, oh, well, look at Guatemala, it's a violent country. They had 40 years of a very brutal civil war, so maybe people are desensitized. But that logic wouldn't then be consistent when you consider that things like this have actually happened in a country like the UK. Not so long ago, we had vigilante mobs hunting down paedophiles, alleged paedophiles, and a lot of innocent people were targeted. So we're not that much better ourselves. So I don't think you could say, oh, it's just a lack of education or a lack of development or something. That is a factor, but I think that there are a lot of human beings would be capable of this, and that is a frightening thing. Human emotions can be a very powerful thing, and when something terrible has happened, like a murder, people's emotions rise. And this is why, although I've made videos that have criticized police power, I've always used a caveat to those videos, which is we absolutely need the police to have some level of power. I've never, ever, ever disputed that. Because when you have a situation where a mob like this is in a situation where they can hold back the police from helping a young girl, it's barbaric, utterly barbaric. Um, and I don't even know what words can sum up what I think of what they've done to her. Like I said, the photos are very disturbing. Um, what should have happened was people should have stopped her. Then when the police arrived, they arrest her. She gets tried and she is sentenced. But what happened here was, saying animalistic is even quite because it suggests that animals have no compassion. This is the lowest common denominator of human behavior, and it sickens me to the core. But then I'm not naive because human emotions can be very powerful. Now, in this case, it was a 60-year-old man that was killed. Let's imagine that it had been, a woman raped or a child killed, and let's say the alleged murderer was lynched. Now, I know not everyone watching this will agree with me here, but I believe that all examples of mob justice are barbaric, regardless of the crime. Whether it be a terrorist or a child molester or a murderer, I think that when society reduces itself to this level, it becomes as bad as the criminal. That is not the same as saying that someone who's committed a serious crime should not be punished harshly. I believe, especially in the case of serious crimes, definitely long prison sentences, and even in those cases, I would argue there would be a case for the death penalty. Although I'm personally against the death penalty, I do understand the argument on, for example, if you have a child killer, give them their day in court, sentence them, and then put them to death. I wouldn't lose a lot of sleep over that. So although I'm against the death penalty, I do see why there's an emotional factor in certain cases. So if that's what the mob done, the point I'm making is if that's what the mob done to a girl who killed a 68-year-old man, what would they have done to, I don't know, if an alleged criminals were to have killed an old lady or something? The point here is that emotions should not dictate justice. And believe me, I'm no bleeding heart, so to speak, when it comes to crime. I don't even like that expression, but I'm using it because it's the sort of slur that people like to make against anyone who tries to show reason in these cases. It's not about being a bleeding heart. It's about recognizing that if you allow society to become like that, and there is no control or no consequences for that sort of behavior, then we all become desensitized. I do not want to be a part of any society that behaves that way. And here in the UK, we're far from perfect. There has been examples of not necessarily like that, but we have had people lynched and we have had people killed by vigilantes in recent years. So this is, I believe, a worldwide problem potentially, and I just find it deeply disturbing. I mean, you can hate the crime that she committed without believing that she should be treated like that because this is sad all around. A man has lost his life, and now a young woman has lost her life in the most barbaric way. I don't know what's going to happen to the other two. I don't know if the report doesn't say anything about the mob getting their hands on the guys, but um, I feel pretty sick to be honest, and I don't know how anyone could even attempt to condone something like this. Um, in this case, she did commit a serious crime, and there's even worst cases of mob vigilantism whereby the so-called crime has been, for example, blasphemy. Now, in those cases, I just think there's no words that I can use to describe what happens. But this is why you do need a strong police force and you do need a strong legal system. It's absolutely paramount. I've been watching a series recently called Garrow's Law. It's from 2009-10, but it's about the lawyer William Garrow. He maybe I'm going slightly off topic here, but he coined the phrase innocent until proven guilty. The whole point about that was developing due process. And in the Britain of the 1780s, we were quite a primitive legal system. It was better than it had been in previous decades, but it was still very corrupt. And yeah, if you see that series, you'll know what I'm talking about. Even today, we're far from perfect. But to me, a perfect legal system, the guilty will be punished and the innocent will be either get justice or found innocent. Um, but I am absolutely convinced that there can be no rational justification whatsoever for this sort of mob behavior, regardless of the crime. And, you know, granted, there will be some crimes that people will say, oh, but they deserve it. Um, the more serious the crime, the more severe the punishment should be. I agree with that. But I believe it should be in the hands of officials who don't have an emotional attachment to it. Because if you allow emotions to dictate justice, then frankly we may all as well be back in the dark ages. So I do hope that the ringleaders of this mob are arrested and punished severely themselves through long periods in prison. Because in the end of the day, this was a 16-year-old girl. She will have parents. Um, she will have relatives, and you know what she done to the man was, and we don't even know actually what her role in that was. You know, we don't know if she personally killed the man. We don't know anything really, except that she was involved in it. Um, but even if she killed him, I still wouldn't condone what happened to her. If she killed the man, she should have been in prison for a very long time. But I don't know how anyone could rationally even try to justify something like this. And what troubles me is that now I'm pleased to say on the newspaper link, most people were coming out with the sort of views that I'm coming out with. So I'm pleased to see that there's a consistency with that. But there are people in the world who will try to make excuses for it. And we've seen this in theocracies as well. We've seen it in Afghanistan earlier this year where there was a woman uh, you know, lynched to death or burned alive because she supposedly desecrated the Quran. Actually, she was quite a religious woman. This was a well documented case. Um, in the weeks that followed, there were women's rights campaigners and some men as well who campaigned against that mob lynching. In that case, it was supposedly blasphemy, which was a far, far less serious issue than this. I mean, this wasn't a trivial crime; there was murder committed. But in other cases, we're talking about people being lynched over so-called blasphemy. Now, in my book, blasphemy is void; it shouldn't be seen as a crime at all. But you know, I'm not naive. We don't live in a perfect world, and there are backward countries who do see blasphemy as a crime, which do see blasphemy as a crime. Um, Afghanistan clearly has a very long way to go. Anyway, I'll leave it there. There's not much more I can say, but sometimes humanity really is sickening. I promise the next videos I'll make will be more upbeat. Thanks for watching.